Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will be reading fanfic called Flesh. Have you ever wondered what Naruto would be like if he was an MHA and had an ability similar to that of the flying Raijin? Me neither, but this one is good. Thanks for listening and enjoy. It was a rather average day in Mustafu. Not much out of the ordinary besides the occasional villainous deed and the cliché heroic chase. A society run by humans with developed mutations known as quirks. These people held the largest part of the world's population at 80%. Though these mutations seemed powerful in their own right, only few held the title of hero. The use of the elements, strength and speed beyond human comprehension, healing abilities, conductive abilities, and anything you could think of in a quirk, someone had it. Some applications of one's quirk were substantially better than others, therefore placing them higher in society on whether their quirks were more suited to their occupation. In this void of need, heroes were developed around the world to apprehend those who use such abilities for their own selfish desires. Adults and children alike adored these famed figures, positioning them amongst the elitists of their individual countries. Though to one blonde-haired teenager, heroes using their fame and fortune as driving forces of their careers was as despicable as their villain counterparts. This platitude society only birthed more villains to fit the social agenda, because what would heroes be needed for if there was no villains to combat? If that wasn't enough, they were thousands of hero schools across the globe. It was legally stated that citizens needed to go to hero school in order to earn their rights to use their quirk in public. Nevertheless, usage of one's quirk without permission by law was illegal with a potential chance of jail time to a certain extent. Japan was home to one of these hero schools, UA High. UA was said to be the best hero school in all of the world, with every child coming from middle school who thought themselves to be the best, tried for their chance to be inducted into said institution. They had 4 definitive courses for the best of these students depending on where they fit best: hero course, support course, general education course, and the business course. Naruto Uzumaki was not one of these students nor heroes. But his reason for heading in the direction of the famous high school was strictly out of firm curiosity. A curiosity that might be related to an incident that occurred a few days before. Flashback, 5 days before. At one of the busiest intersections in downtown Mustafu, a girl had recently developed her quirk at the age of 4 and was unable to control her recently discovered powers. Loud sirens and numerous car alarms went off as the street rippled in waves, leaving a little girl sat crying in the epicenter. Vehicles and citizens alike were tossed in random directions as the black concrete continued to send rubble and objects towards bystanders. As people ran in cries of fear, trying to evade the rippling waves of demolition, heroes arrived on the scene. As such, they tried their best to get towards the girl without further alarming her and continuing said destruction. "I can't get close," the hero, Power Loader, exclaimed, destroying the rubble sent his way. "Where's Kamui?" Another hero screamed over the sound of a small car sailing overhead. A blonde-haired, blue-eyed teenager stood to the side out of harm's way. Dressed in his usual middle school garb with a plain white tee, the dusty breeze drifted chaotically, blowing his loosely spiked hair over his oceanic orbs. He was pretty tall for his age at 5 feet 10 inches and lean, but muscular build under his clothing, which one would presume he trained vigorously for. Of all things today, he presumed to be a rather boring turnout considering how mediocre his life was. But this was something not as dull as he would have thought. Seeing the heroes on scene panic at the turn of events and the viciousness of the girl's quirk only furthered his interest. Even Power Loader, who is famous for his tech, couldn't even budge an inch with all the random objects being thrown his way. It was sort of embarrassing if he said so himself. Heroes unable to perform their duties because of a 4-year-old girl innocently releasing her power. He would probably be able to get close with his quirk, but he wasn't sure if it would stop the ensuing chaos. It's pathetic, honestly. Without thinking about the consequences he'd bring upon himself, he flashed next to the small girl. Yes, his quirk was extremely powerful, and his control was in the same league. Under his quirk registration when he was younger, he had defined his quirk as teleportation, but that wasn't the only acclamation to his ability. Within a range of 5 kilometers, he could flash anywhere he could see, and within a blink he'd reappear at said location. Within that time frame, the world around him would slow for a second, allowing him to perform an action and witness the entirety of his surroundings. Even with such a high speed, tunnel vision was supposed to occur based on the natural physics of aggressive motion, but he had none, though he always chalked it up to being a part of his power. As he closed in on the girl, he extended his arms to pick her up under the shoulder, hypothesizing that contact with something besides her arms resulted in her quirk usage. With his hands under her armpits, he pulled her into his arms and flashed again to the location of the heroes, hoping to put her in custody of a hero without revealing his face to the public. He was a private person and liked to be by himself, so keeping his face away from media was all he wanted. Posing for the media was for troublesome women. Someone had shown him there was another way to help others and himself without confrontation. Within this time frame, he slid Power Loader away from the last approaching debris, leaving him with fun-sized parting gift. It was always a mesmerizing sight watching the brief stagnant motion of others when using his quirk. Sweat dripping slowly from faces, features of one's face twisted in a certain motion. Objects passively sitting in a calm and blank state. This moment was what made his quirk the best. Without allowing the hero to see him, he flashed away once more. As he faded, the streets grew quiet. The destructive force of the new quirk user miraculously disappeared, leaving the tech teacher for Yue holding the sobbing tot in the fold of his armor. Seeing the scene, many citizens viewing from a safe distance yelled out in relief and praise for the tech hero. "What the hell? Did you see that?" One middle-aged man screamed. "Power Loader has done the impossible. Yue's hero tech is becoming unbelievingly amazing. How did he even do that?" A female reporter sprouted as her cameraman faced her awestruck face. During the mayhem, the mechanical exoskeleton hero was the most confused of all. "That was incredible. Is that some new relief gadget or something?" Another hero on scene approached him. "No, Believe me, I wish I had support items capable of magically saving people out of thin air." Saying so, the hero looked down at the girl in front of him, still crying silently asking for her mom. "Let's get the girl back to whoever is on scene for her. It's okay, little one. We'll find your mommy." Power Loader cradled the girl as he jogged off towards the police barrier holding back the cheering citizens. The hero smiled and waved, seeing the people of Mustafar. The praise was nice, if nothing else. A few hours later, nobody on site has any explanation as to a credited save of the girl. We came to a conclusion that perhaps another hero had been stationed near our sector, but the quirk listings of nearby heroes don't match the capabilities needed to fulfill such a rescue. The hero explained his findings. However, the assumption that someone who wasn't a registered hero saved the girl was embarrassing and shameful. A few heroes sat around a table meant for those who were the best of the Mustafa sector. Most of these people were UA teachers given jurisdiction over that prefecture. Gun hero, Snipe was the first to speak. So a potential non-hero used their quirk to save the surrounding citizens and the little girl. All this within the blink of an eye. This is troubling. Midnight, the 18-plus hero followed. Wow, such an impressive ability. Naked to the senses, how magnificent and terrifying at the same time. Some of the members nodded their head, although reluctant considering her tone of voice. One member in the room stayed quiet as the others conversed and started to play the recording of the incident. Shoyuta Aizawa, known as a racerhead and a teacher of UA, narrowed his eyes at the description of the presumed ability. "Wait, did you see that? Stop the video at 0:11 and look at the far left of the screen. That blonde kid disappears into thin air." Slowing it down at the point, the member's eyes widened at barely being able to catch the person on screen. Dressed in a black blazer with flowing bright blonde hair, Aizawa was sure now. However, under different circumstances, he wished he could have found the boy after his first encounter. "I know who that is," the black-haired man said, drawing the other heroes to his insomniac features. "Oh, just who could this handsome young man be?" Midnight asked with a sultry smile. Aizawa kept his stoicism, ignoring his colleague as usual. "Naruto Uzumaki, age 15. I encountered him many months ago, while he was doing some unsavvy things. I erased his quirk and we fought for a bit. The group grew into an uncomfortable silence. Matching Aizawa in combat was almost unheard of as the black-haired man was extremely reliable when it came down to combat without quirks. He was one of the best in the business of heroes at doing so. Snipe flipped to a page of the National Quirk Registry and flipped it towards the middle of the table. Teleportation? The Uzumaki boy should have graduated weeks ago. What is he not doing at a hero school with such an ability? The masked man asked the eraser hero, who was still recovering from an attack on the USJ. Aizawa sighed and turned his head to the screen, now showing a headshot of the boy. Naruto was lazily looking at the camera with half-lidded eyes. He believes heroes to be posers, or some of us. Uzumaki said he believes heroes are the ones who operate in the dark to provide stability for the top heroes. His response was met with a few appraising looks. Even Shoyuta had an unnoticeable gleam in his eye. I had planned to bring him to UA, but he evaded me for months and I've never been able to catch him off guard again. This may be risky, but as an UA employee, I believe we should take the chance to reach out to him before he goes an alternate path. Aizawa said with his low monotone voice. For the first time, the UA principal spoke. Aizawa-kun, you said he was caught in the act once before. Therefore, before I share my opinion, what was the occurrence? Nisa said in a carefree voice, sitting short in stature. The boy was hired to be the getaway on a bank heist in the 2E sector at Kariai International in October. I caught him before the offenders made their way to him and we fought. He said he needed the money to pay rent after being dropped from the government's legal plan for orphans. He was acting out of desperation, so I made a judgment call. We talked after all suspects were arrested, and he wasn't very forthcoming with information. Supposedly, he's been in and out of orphanages since the day he was born and lived with the bare necessities. He reminded me of myself in a way and I was particularly fond of him, but he vanished before I was able to help further. Eraserhead told the story, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. Many whispered to themselves as he finished, especially after saying he was fond of someone. Nisa stood on his seat and smiled. That is very against your character, Aizawa, but I must say I'm intrigued. I'll accept your judgment. He'll be accepted into the general education course if we can locate him. In the meantime, get a hold of the boy through the government directory and extend the invitation as a token of faith. Either that or Kayama can try her luck. The 18-plus only hero seductively smirked in Shuta's direction, colorfully displaying her interest in such a prospect of her Gen Ed class. The underground hero sighed before nodding. Are you absolutely certain about this, Nizu? He used his quirk illegally, no matter if he saved lives. Plus, we have no knowledge of his previous whereabouts. This will undoubtedly come back to haunt us. Snipe added his thoughts, getting many nods of agreement. The principal chuckled. Oh, don't worry about all the trivial matters. I do everything for a reason, you see. I believe a golden opportunity has come our way. After his statement, the heroes quickly shuffled onto the UA Sports Festival security measures. After the recent attack on the USJ, they were expectantly weary for another similar occurrence. Flashback end. Naruto strode slowly through the gates of UA, admiring the incredible architecture and luxurious facilities. Plus, it wasn't every day someone got to leisurely stroll through one of the best hero schools in the world. Students and faculty stared at him as he wandered, trying to find his way through the labyrinth of hallways. He was the odd man out as he wasn't wearing a uniform and was wearing a mask over the bridge of his nose. The blonde was guessing that his presence was disturbing for some after being recently attacked by the League of Villains. It also didn't help that he had no idea where he was going. Out of nowhere, a student with glasses and a sturdy form about his height with dark blue hair marched up to him. You there? Boy in the blazer, it is not acceptable to be on campus without a uniform. I will have to take you to campus security as it is against student policy. The teenager scolded, chopping his forearms back and forth. As he approached the Uzumaki to take him away, a caressing hand touched him on the shoulder. Oh, no worries. Itaku-in this one is with me. I'll take him from here. Ingenium's brother saluted at the Gen Ed teacher, Midnight, though he narrowed his specs at the blonde briefly before taking off. The blue-eyed teenager gazed boringly at the woman before him. It wasn't like he was a stranger to the female form, although the 18-plus hero could be considered a cut above the rest. She smiled cheekily at him, pushing her left arm under her bust as she did so. Naruto watched the fast boy sprint off, comically kicking up dust from a clean floor. He returned his attention lazily to the women in front of him, standing with a hand on her hip. "You must be Naruto. I'll take you to Principal Nizu. I could see you were struggling with direction." She giggled a little, trying to draw a smile or something out of the stoic boy. Seeing no reaction, she pouted and turned heel, motioning him to follow. "No fun. My charms always work on boys your age." She added with a swing of her hips and slow look over her shoulder as they began walking through the crowds of students. To her surprise, the boy cast an uninterested look, leaving the older woman to pout mournfully. A few minutes later, a knock on the door of Niza's office alerted him of his visitor he had been monitoring on the school cameras. Just by observing him, he could see the boy was fairly different compared to the typical high school student. Seeing Midnight and Naruto Uzumaki come through the door, he plastered a welcoming smile. "Hello, Naruto Uzumaki. Welcome to UA." The mouse greeted cheerfully. The 18-plus only hero sat him down in a chair next to himself. "Thank you," he replied boringly with a dull but slightly guarded voice. "I'm glad you answered my call. It's great to have you." At the boy's nod and gaze shifting towards the woman next to him, Midnight continued for the principal. "You're probably questioning why you've been summoned here today, yes?" Naruto nodded. "Eraser had notified us of your existence and your current circumstances." She smiled genuinely, which confused him a tad. The masked blonde's eye widened considerably before narrowing in suspicion. "Is that so?" he said evenly. Niza grinned, "Of course. Aizawa seemed very fond of you, Mr. Uzumaki. I can't help but to want to share that sentiment." "I don't understand." Namiri sat straighter in her chair. "Aizawa has been trying to reach you for quite some time. He had a proposition for you, but you had left before he could offer anything. To be honest, we're quite surprised to have found you so easily." The blonde's eyebrows furrowed. "Then why isn't Aizawa here to give this proposition?" Suspicion leaked into the teenager's tone of voice. With the way his muscles tensed, Nizu and Midnight knew the boy was ready to act at even the slightest bit of harm. Well, Eraserhead is a teacher for the 1A course, and with the recent attacks on the USJ, he needs to dedicate all his time to his students. But he gave us permission to speak on his behalf. Nizu pointed out the window, where in a distance, a group of students seemed to be training individually. A man who remotely resembled Aizawa stood off to the side, a yellow object tucked under his arm. Naruto stayed silent as he stared at the two adults. Nizi only smiled in response, whereas Kayama felt a little stricken by the boy's hardened gaze. "I see." He glanced outwards at the supposed figure of Aizawa once more. The small principal pulled out a manila folder. On the label of the envelope was his name and his middle school ID picture. 3 similar papers were pulled from the folder, one each holding a red UA stamp on the top right corner. "Take a look at this and tell me what you think," Niza suggested. The dog-bear mouse slid the paper across the dark oak desk, where the blonde gingerly swept them up into his hand. The top of the first page read, UA admission profile. His eyebrow curled in confusion as he peered at the two heroes from his peripherals. The paper had all the general knowledge of his person, including his height, weight, quirk, background, and previous accolades and schooling. Swiping the first underneath the pile, the next one read, Hero Recommendation, where Show Yuta Aizawa, Eraserhead, was written neatly beneath. Under Hero Comments, it said, Potential is outstanding, a good kid with a strong disposition, and beyond prepared for practical adaptability. Finally, the last paper was a UA invitation notice, the same ones qualifying students would be sent in the mail. A grinning All Might, dramatically posing, was centered in the middle with the words, You are accepted, emboldened. "I don't understand. Is this what I'm here for?" Naruto gently handed the papers back, never once raising his voice or betraying his stoic facade. Midnight smiled at the teenager, yes. Shoyuta went through the trouble of applying for you, hoping that he'd be able to find you when the time came for the UA admission test. And as you can see, you've been accepted on recommendation. Congratulations, Naruto. The scantily dressed woman bounced in her seat. If you choose to attend, you will place in Midnight's general education course. But with the UA Sports Festival coming up, you'd have a chance to be put into one of the hero courses. So, what do you say? Nisa grinned happily at the blonde. Naruto frowned. This all seems a little too good to be true. Since you seem to know me, you obviously know the circumstances behind mine and Aizawa's meeting. For all I know, there could be the police waiting for me once I step outside of this building. Why would you create such an elaborate lie? What are you planning? The teleportation quirk user stood from his seat, backing deliberately towards the door. What? No, please don't misunderstand. Namiri rose from her seat elegantly. We wouldn't do something so cruel. If we wanted you to be arrested, there's no way we would have let you step foot in UA. The woman assured. Nisa leapt from his booster chair, snaking his hands behind his back. Kayama stepped sideways, allowing the short principal to walk around his desk so that he could stand in front of the boy. The blonde stood unflinchingly, tracing the high-spec quirk user all the way. I admire your skepticism, the animal sighed. It's a certainly good trait to have. However, what Midnight says is true. That being said, I would be lying if I said I wasn't planning anything. Naruto looked to interrupt, but Nisa shook his head reassuringly. It's truly a win-win situation. That's if you'd be willing to hear me out. The blue-eyed Uzumaki stared at the UA principal and then glanced at the 18-plus hero. If it's possible, I would like to talk with Aizawa. I'm not sure I can trust what you say. The teenager confessed. Nisa laughed good-heartedly. That's fine. I expected you to say so. Midnight Sensei? Kayama perked up. Could you escort Mr. Uzumaki to 1A's training grounds? Be sure to thank Aizawa. He did tell us not to interrupt today. Even so, I can't say he'll be disappointed with the unexpected visitor. The woman looked the teenager up and down, licking her lips in sultry manner. It'd be my pleasure, come along, Naruto. Namiri walked past the boy, motioning him to follow her. Outside, the masked blonde walked in stride with the slightly shorter woman. With the hallways empty, the echo of their footsteps clamored hypnotically. So, Naruto-kun, where did you go to middle school? She asked seductively, drawing closer to him. The blonde looked at her funnily, as if asking, what's your problem? Naruto answered simply, Taiko. Namiri smiled. Oh, so right here in Mustafa? Taiko is a decent school. How was your time there? She tilted her head in a curious manner. The masked boy kept his head forward. It was normal. He said stoically, You're such a chatterbox. The 18-plus hero laughed heartily. Naruto ignored the joust, choosing to only scoff at the woman, muttering what sounded like, what a drag, under his voice. What was that, mister? For the first time, the blonde turned his head to look at her in the eyes. To her delight, they were an icy blue, much like her own dash. If only she could see the handsome face that was surely under that mask. You're an annoying woman, he said blandly, not even waiting for her reaction as he turned forward. Ooh, I like when they play hard to get. Instead of being offended, she bit her finger, eyeing him with an aroused ogle. Training ground, 1A. Shoyuda Aizawa looked on appraisingly at his students. They truly were a crop above the rest, and he believed they knew it as well. Some still needed attitude adjustments, like his certain raging blonde exploding boy. They were all excellent users of their respective quirks, and their limits kept increasing as they trained further. The USJ incident really showed the students how unprepared they still were for the real world. They could have easily lost their lives, as well as him. Fortunately, they came out clean after All Might swept the rest of the League of Villains. Such cliché bullshit. It showed them what they needed to work on to improve and how to handle a situation like that better. It was sort of a blessing in disguise. He could do without the absolute beating he received from the giant beast, or Nomu, though. He would probably indulge in even more training after being shown how helpless he was fighting the Nomer. He knew he wasn't a match for All Might, but still, he might have become complacent in his abilities over time, and that wasn't acceptable for him. It was truly pathetic, having to admit to his fellow heroes how a 15-year-old boy matched him in combat while also being cannon fodder against a biological created weapon. Speaking of the boy, he was expecting him some time at school. Hopefully, he accepted Yue's invitation. The hero community did not have many underground heroes such as himself. Aizawa-san, hello. The voice said, rid of emotion. The long black-haired hero's eyes widened slightly under his bandaged face. He truly was not expecting this. He turned back around to his students as Naruto stood next to him doing the same. He peered over his bandages at the boy who now stood the same height as him. It's you. Aizawa matched the energy. Naruto nodded slowly. Yes, judging from your reaction, you might have been expecting me, he said stoically. I suppose I was. I knew an invitation from Yue would make any normal teenager jump at the opportunity. Wasn't sure it'd work on you, yet here you are. Aizawa said without facing him. The blonde sighed heavily. What do you want from me, Aizawa? Shoyuta faced the blonde, looking slightly comical in his mummified form. I don't want anything from you. It's more like, what do you want for yourself? Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion. When I first saw you, I thought to myself, isn't it my job to protect kids like this? It was as if I had failed at being a hero. As an underground hero, it's my job to stop crime, but what about stopping crime before it could happen? Seeing a kid in a place like that, left with no other choices, it felt like I had just woken up, my vision suddenly clearer. The masked teenager's eyes widened a bit. Aizawa turned to face his students once again. Eraser had sighed, the potential I saw in you. I couldn't describe it. Still can't. I get that you're skeptical. Trust me, I'd feel the same in your position. However, the potential I believe I saw was that of another perspective from what we have here at UA. I love my students, but damn it, none of them have seen what it's really like outside the parameters of the media. You were there, you nearly became a villain, and you've been in the ventures of desperation. None of these kids have seen the things you've seen, and that makes you more prepared than them for when the time comes for one to become a pro hero. Although, if I really had to answer, what do you want from me? Become a UA student, prove that you can be a pillar that supports the top heroes from the shadows. Destroy all the students at the sports festival with the power I know you are capable of. Even if some of them are my students, they don't have much to lose, but you, Naruto Uzumaki, have everything to lose, because you have nothing. You think you are the only one out there in the orphan system, or living on the streets with quirks but unable to prove themselves. Think Naruto, All Might may try for successors for the symbol of peace, but you could be something different for the sores that society has overlooked. Naruto stared wide-eyed at Aizawa. Naruto recollected himself and looked away from the hero. However, Aizawa could easily pick out the contemplation in his body language. Now you understand. I trust in your judgment to make the right choice. I did all that I did because I believe in you. The man gripped his shoulder tightly and started to walk towards his group of students now waiting for him. Thank you, Aizawa. I think I've made my choice. The masked blonde marched away from the mummified man, a refreshed determination that had been absent, returning in full form. Naruto Uzumaki would be attending Yue. Aizawa with class. As the underground hero approached his class, they all were whispering and pointing in the direction of Naruto retreating. Some were pale in the face, others had their eyes and mouth wide, as if they had been told the most unbelievable thing. Sometimes he forgot how easily swayed kids could be. Mina Ishido, the acid quirk user, shouted at him when he got close enough. Aizawa-sensei, is it true that blonde guy is your son? What? Aizawa thought annoyingly. His silence was taken the wrong way. I didn't know you had a son, sensei. Why didn't you tell us? Denki Kaminari, the electrification quirk user, said in exasperation, showing straight disbelief. Why dash, he was cut off again by Sato, the sugar rush quirk user. Is he a third year or something? No, he is dash. Aizawa was getting fed up with being ignored, still being rushed with questions. Aizawa-sensei, what's his name? Why is he blonde? Is he wearing a mask to make his father feel better, Karo? I wonder if Aizawa-sensei has a daughter? Does he have daddy problems? Enough. He grumbled in a low and melodic voice, his eyes now glued upon their persons. Listen, he's not my son. Everyone turned to Ida, who looked away ashamed, before turning around and bowing at the waist in front of the homeroom teacher. I apologize, Aizawa-sensei. It is unbecoming of a student to assume something without evidence. I am ashamed of my classmates and upperclassmen. I will receive my punishment with honor. The turbo engine user yelled proudly towards the ground. Get up, you'll probably be seeing more of him, but no, he is not my son. Keep striving to improve. The sports festival is next week. Come prepared and determined. The entirety of Japan has their eyes on Class 1A, dismissed. Everyone shuffled off embarrassingly, besides a few who didn't care much. Ida-san, you said he had the same bored look on his face as Aizawa-sensei. Where the hell does that say he's his son? Aizawa heard someone yell at the class representative as they left for the day. He was pretty hot though. Did you see that ass? Principal Nizu's office. I accept Principal Nizu. The genius animal smiled and laughed happily for the boy. I see Aizawa has a lot of influence in your decision. The mouse said cheerfully with his fingers interlaced. Somewhat. The masked blonde said stoically. The white mouse smiled slyly in a way that confused the teenager. Now how about we have that talk about what I plan to do with you? Naruto leaned in unconsciously. A day later. For some reason, Kayama-sensei wanted to make a dramatic entrance for him on his first day. People around the school were already puzzled to see a new student a month after the exams. All the eyes were quizzically on him and abruptly, like the previous day, Midnight came to the rescue. She told him on the way to class that there was a rumor he was Aizawa's son. She got a hearty chuckle out of that. Supposedly, the engine leg boy he met the day before had started it accidentally, and it further snowballed from there. Him an orphan, having parents? That was a laughable joke that dried a long, long time ago. You ready, Naruto-kun? Count to 30 and then come in, we will have a necessary introduction. Namiri said confidently, cracking her whip in her right hand. Naruto sighed slowly. That's not necessary, Kagama-sensei. I can do dash. He was silenced by her finger directly pointed a little too close to his face. Nonsense. My students must fulfill their roles or be punished. She slapped the whip into her opposite hand suggestively. The R-rated hero watched as he gave the same unperturbed look as the first time they met. The hardest ones to fluster are always my favorite. She bit her bottom lip. Oh, you naughty boy. I'll get you eventually. She entered the room slowly and gently shut the door behind her. Hello, class. Today we have a new student. He was recently brought in to fill our empty spot. You might have already seen him around school, but I'll allow him to introduce himself to you all. Remember not to speak or get the whip. After 30 seconds, the door creaked open, revealing a lightly tanned blonde with a mask covering the bottom half of his face. Many people in the class instantly recognized him as the supposed Class 1A sensei's son through rumors, while others couldn't care less or had no idea of him at all. Some girls became flustered at his appearance. He was really mysterious and quite the looker even with the mask. His blonde hair was unruly and covered his forehead with a bright, messy blonde, while half-lidded blue eyes looked lazily upon the group of teenagers. His face had no blemishes or damaged skin, and he seemed to be pretty athletically built based on how his uniform stretched in certain areas of his body. He held his bag at his side, while his right hand found its way into his pocket. What a steal! Some of the girls thought excitedly. Midnight motioned for him to speak. Hello, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. I hope we can get along. He kept his hands in pockets, waiting for someone to ask a question. None came. Everyone looked at him and then went back to their teacher. Was he supposed to say anything else? Naruto-kun, when introducing yourself you say your likes, dislikes, and hobbies. You know that sort of stuff, so... Kayama wafted her hand in a circular motion, getting him to continue. My likes? I have some. Dislikes? I have some of those as well. Hobbies? Maybe. He